Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast where we get real and talk about the messy side of mental health. I'm MommaFoxFire, and today we're talking about grief and loss. When most people hear that combo of words, they immediately think about death. Someone dies and you grieve. That's the script we've all been handed. But grief is so much bigger and more complicated than that. You can grieve a friendship that fell apart. You can grieve a job you lost or a career path that didn't work out. You can grieve the life you thought you'd have by now. You can grieve who you used to be. I think that last one, maybe the last two, hit different for a lot of people. Mourning a past version of yourself is a strange thing because nobody died, but you still feel a loss. Maybe you were more carefree 5 years ago. Maybe you were more confident or more creative or just had more energy. And now you look back at that person and think, where did they go? That's grief too, even if nobody wants to call it that. There really is no one single timeline for grief. People love to talk about stages of grief like it's some kind of orderly process you move through. Denial, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, then acceptance. Clean and linear. Except it's not like that at all. It's messy, and it shows up when you don't expect it. You can feel fine for months, and then hear a song or smell something familiar, and suddenly you're right back in it. You can cycle through multiple feelings in one day, or even in 1 hour. And that's normal, even if it might not feel normal while you're living it. What makes it worse is how we treat grief in our culture. We give people maybe a week off from work when someone dies, and then we expect them to be functional again. We say things like they're in a better place or time heals all wounds because we're uncomfortable sitting with someone else's pain. We rush people through their grief because watching someone grieve makes us confront our own losses and our own mortality. So we push for closure. We push for moving on. We act like grief is something you finish instead of something you carry. And then there's the layer where people compare their grief to someone else's suffering. You lost your job, but someone else is homeless, so you tell yourself you don't get to feel bad. Your relationship ended, but someone else's spouse died, so your pain doesn't count. That's really garbage. Pain isn't a competition. Your grief is valid even if someone somewhere has it worse. By that logic, you'd never be able to feel happy either, because someone somewhere else always has it better. Today's guest is VictoriaWaye, and she knows grief from multiple angles. She lost both her parents when she was 9 years old, both of them, quickly, and the way her family handled it was to tell her to get over it 3 months later. Just close the book and move on. Did I mention that she was 9? Her younger sister processed that same loss completely differently, and it tore them apart for years. Victoria had to figure out how to grieve on her own terms, while also navigating life without parents and dealing with family members who weren't equipped to help. But Victoria's story isn't just about childhood trauma. She also talks about grieving past versions of herself and relationships that ended and opportunities that didn't pan out. She's been a content creator for years, and she started out streaming Minecraft before evolving into motivational and mindset coaching work. She works full-time in public relations and full-time as a content creator, which is exhausting just to think about. And through all of that, she's been processing grief in its many forms. Victoria is incredibly honest about the fact that grief doesn't follow rules. She talks about memory loss from trauma and how in some ways that's been helpful. She talks about her sister blaming her for their parents' death and how they eventually repaired that relationship. She talks about setting boundaries when people treat you like a dumping ground for their problems. She talks about celebrating small wins even when you're in the thick of it. This interview covers a lot of ground, as you can probably tell. We talk about self-care and sleep and the importance of finding people who actually lift you up instead of drain you. We talk about death positivity and whether it's healthy to prepare for loss. We talk about COVID. We talk about how 2020 was a collective grief experience that nobody knew how to name. And we talk about what it means to make the most of your time here without being morbid or preachy about it. So that's what you're about to hear, a very real conversation about grief and loss with someone who's lived it and learned from it. Not easy answers, just honest conversation about something we all deal with but rarely discuss openly. Let's get into it. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. We are here with the lovely VictoriaWaye, and she has come to us to talk about grieving and loss and how it comes in many forms. I know that song. I hope everyone knows that song, but maybe, maybe not everyone. Hello, bye, Mark. Hey, Beta, how are you doing? So Victoria is here again to talk to us about grieving and loss, and we've got a lot of great questions lined up. If you have a question for our guest today, and you want to ask that question, you're welcome to just put it into chat. I also have a question queue lined up, exclamation point and the letter Q. Follow with your question, and it will get your question into the question queue. That especially allows it to have most definitely more attention. And sometimes things get a little bit lost in chat, but that way you are able to ask your question, and we will keep on moving along. So one of the reasons that Victoria creates content is to be the light for others, to let them know that they aren't alone, to let them know that no matter what their circumstances, they are capable of getting through it. Our past affects our future, but only defines us if we allow it to. She also recently wrote an article entitled Grieving and the Loss of Self. And in that article, she talks about how grieving isn't always about death, how it can be about missed opportunities, friendships that didn't last, etc. And one common form of grief is mourning our past selves and missing how things used to be. So really excited to talk to you today, Victoria. Here is the link to her Twitter. Y'all go give her a follow as well. She is also a streamer on Twitch, so we'll do a shout out for her. If I can type. There we go. There we go.
6 years in September, so I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. That's dedication right there. I have only been doing this for a couple years and I only really found my kind of what I wanted to do in the past year or so. So that's dedication. So we'll just jump right in. What made you become interested in blogging and content creation?
Well, I actually started out in a very different kind of sphere than I am at now. And that's what's so cool about content creation. It's not linear. Like, you can create something and you have the freedom to change something or to evolve and become something else. And so I started out as a Minecraft streamer years ago. I got interested in content creation on a dare from a friend. He's like, you won't go streaming on Twitch. And I'm like, want to watch me? And so I started to do it. At first, I didn't even know what it was or anything like that. And I really loved Minecraft. I still do. And that's where most of my viewership came from. And I then started to stream a game called Wizard 101 as well for a brief period of time. We were pushing for partner. We were doing really well. And then I realized something was missing. I was like, I'm not loving this anymore. I'm not enjoying this. And I think that is such a huge part of it. And so I started to ease more into motivational and inspirational content as well as marketing content, which I felt like kind of my channel was growing up in a way,
Right. That evolution.
It was really hard though. Viewership tanked because changing games or changing genres
Yeah.
completely, and kind of rebuilding that base right now, which is such an exciting thing though. I'm just really stoked for the right now. But what got me into content creation was a dare.
That's awesome. And was it kind of did blogging follow streaming on Twitch, or did you start off blogging somewhere else?
Blogging's interesting. Years ago, I used to run a online writing group called Articulate Wordsmiths, which I've since given ownership to someone else. But I've always been very interested in writing. I used to also proofread for a entrepreneur as well for his website. And so I used to do a lot of that type of thing. And so I am very passionate about expressing myself through words. Words are just another beautiful medium that we can share our ideas. It's like a blank page is like a blank canvas, and you can just fill it with words and that have true meaning and can give such a sensation. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah, it really is. Well, it's one of those, I am in sales for an engineering company and I do a lot of writing for our proposals. And it's one of those things that it's just like, you can take a tiny little piece of information and spin it into such a story. And it's just such a cool thing to be able to do that. And not everyone can do that. Like, that is definitely a skill that can be taught, but it's easier if it comes pretty natural to you. So you also work a lot. You said you work 80 plus hours per week. That's so much.
It's quite the balance. Yeah, I work full time in public relations slash marketing, as well as full time as a content creator and coach.
Yeah.
And so finding time is a tough thing, and making time for self care is
Hmm.
another tough thing as well. But I like it too. A lot of people, they hate their day job because they're like, hey, I want to do content creation. My heart's not in that. But I look at it as, although I prefer content creation over my public relations job, public relations teaches you something. Like, if
Hmm.
you are isolated from people, you're going to forget how to work with people. And so it reminds me to connect with people. And I think strengthens me and gives me more character as a whole because it continues that muscle.
Yeah.
Working with people is a muscle and continues that forward.
Yeah. And even though we're all physically isolated from one another right now, you're definitely spot on. The piece that if you're working with someone else and you're having to message, especially for someone else, it's a completely different thing from just content creation, where sometimes you feel like you're kind of screaming into the void, right? Like it's one of those things. So you mentioned self care. Is there anything that you do for self care on a regular basis that helps you recover and then also helps you kind of prepare for the next busy day?
Yes, I actually have a lot of self-care. I would say
I
several
love to
hours a
hear
day.
that.
So, self-care for me, it's oftentimes I do a lot of interesting things, such as I use gua sha. Are you familiar with what a gua sha is?
No.
It's a hardened bone that you rub across your skin to encourage circulation. I
Oh.
also use a brush to exfoliate, any dead skin cells, so that
Mhm.
way it breathes, and
I was
it's
gonna ask if
wonderful.
you add in dry brushing after you do that, because I have a dry brush and I actually really love that.
It's amazing. A
It
lot of
is.
people brush it off, but it just
Ha, brush it off.
anyway.
You had to. Love it.
I think the biggest component of any self-care routine should be sleep. A lot of people glamorize not getting enough sleep. They're like, "Yeah, I got 2 hours of sleep last night." And it's especially with being a person who's always on, it's very hard to go to sleep often. And
Yeah.
so by going to sleep at the same time every day, waking up at the same time, like I got up at 6 a.m. today. No matter what time I went to bed, like, I have to in order to
Yeah.
maintain that cycle and that rhythm. That way, when I'm tired, I'm exhausted and
Yeah.
just go straight to bed, There's no variance there. And I try to stick to that as much as possible. It's not perfect, but that's a
Yeah.
huge part of self-care that a lot of people overlook. Um, and there's a lot of stretching involved, a lot of yoga, that I'm not very good at yet, but,
That's
working on that
okay.
one.
Yeah, you don't have to be great at it for it to be effective. It's just so overlooked and it's so important. And it really is. And am known for saying like I'll sleep when the kids graduate. I say that all the time to myself, to other people. Like they say, how do you do this or how do you do that? And I'm like, well, I just told myself I'll sleep whenever the kids graduate. And sometimes that is the reality. But the other part of that is that your body's going to catch up whenever it needs it. Like you're going to crash at some point. And I've had that happen so many times, so many times.
Absolutely. And I think another part of self care that a lot of people overlook is just spending time with the right people.
Yeah.
Like, just hanging out with those who encourage you, who vibe with you, who will lift you up. And when you surround yourself with those type of people, you get an energy, and this energy you can share with others, and it can just be replenishing so much.
Very much. The opposite can be true too. If you're surrounding yourself with shitty people, you're going to have that shitty energy right back at you. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. I just posted that the other day, Autumn. I love that saying. I love that saying so much. Like, you don't have to spend your energy on something that you don't want to. You can literally just walk away and bite. I know you attend all arguments. It's okay. That's the stubbornness. So, do you have a favorite blog or stream or podcast that you read or watch or listen to keep yourself and your content kind of at its freshest?
That's a great question. I'm definitely inspired by a YouTube channel called Impact Theory. There's a host named Tom Bilyeu who interviews other creators, and it's where I actually got the idea to interview other creators live. And his style is very different than mine, but I really like that he brings on people who have something very profound to say. And I found a lot of value in that.
Yeah, I just posted the link to that YouTube channel right there for anybody who wants to check it out. I blast out a lot of invites to arguments. Alex, is that what you're, I can believe that about you, for sure. Most definitely. Yep. There we go. I have not checked him out, but I'm excited too. There are a couple of podcasts that I've been trying to listen to, and it's hard because I only listen to podcasts pretty infrequently. Larissa Rion says, Victoria is such a precious creator. Smart passive income. Thank you for having the other half of my brain. Right? I appreciate you so much. That's the one. So are there any podcasts that you listen to, or is it mostly, do you just listen to the YouTube videos, or do you watch them as well?
Well, because of COVID, my commutes changed a lot. And, that's when most people listen to podcasts. It's hard for me to just sit and listen to something. I have to be doing something else, multitasking, of course. I sometimes listen to a little bit of Brene Brown, if you're familiar with Brene Brown. Yeah, she's just phenomenal and really down to earth. I really like the way that she speaks. I've only recently gotten into her, though. Like I'm so not too familiar quite yet. But that's exciting because then you get to learn more.
Yeah. This says she's a Texan. What? That's where I am.
But you don't have the twang.
No. I think that my parents really tried to ingrain that out of us quite a bit when we were growing up. So
it adds like a warmth to the voice. You know what I mean? Like
it does. However, it also, and this is nothing against a Texas twang, because trust me, when I go see my relatives in East Texas for like a week after, it comes right back out. But nothing against Texas twang. I love the way that it sounds. But also sometimes in conversations, and especially in a male-dominated industry that I work in, you can come off sounding a little bit less intelligent than you actually are, and it can really be a problem. As an adult, I've also tried to downplay it quite a bit because I've had so many people start calling me honey and all that sort of stuff, and I'm like, that's going to stop right now. It's fine for some people to call me honey. Strangers, not one.
So I can call you honey because we're
not strangers. You can call me honey because I know with you it'll come from a place of love. I'm originally from Indiana near Chicago, so I have a really neutral accent. See, Autumn, that's what I'm talking about, like the neutral accent that you can't really place. That's
What's really interesting is I'm actually a classically trained opera singer, and so I can actually do a variety of different accents as well. Like I practice that. I used to use them while live, but no longer since my content's more serious now.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know you were a classically trained opera singer. Do you still sing quite a bit?
In the car.
Yeah, I do the same. Actually, I sing all the time. I'm not a trained anything related to singing, but you can ask all of my children whether or not I sing, and they're like, she makes everything into a song. Everything is a song. I was told regularly when working in a call center they couldn't possibly be from Texas because I don't have an accent. The correct response to that is absolutely, oh, bless your heart. Yes, absolutely. Car is the best venue for concerts. 100%. So have you had any wow moments or really cool things that have come from sharing your story online, either through your stream or blogging or social media or anything like that?
Interestingly, I think the one moment that has really stood out for me was before my rebrand. I used to be known as Mega Dork Vicky, was my gamer tag back in the day. And it's only been a few months since a rebrand. So my audience when I was streaming Minecraft was pretty young, of course. So I got this kid, and I always encourage people that it's okay to be a dork, it's okay to be a geek or a nerd. You just be you. That was the whole like mantra of the channel. This kid messaged me one day and he said, Vicky, I'm like, hey, what's up? And he said, guess what happened? And I'm like, what? And he said, I was at school today and some kids walked up to me and they called me a dork. And I'm like, and he said, and I said, yeah, I am. What are you going to do about it? And they didn't have anything to say. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he stood up to his bullies. He's like,
That's
yeah, I'm a
awesome.
dork. Come at me, and then the kids were like, oh, we didn't expect that, and just
Right.
kind of backed off. I was like, that is so cool. Like,
yeah.
I have a screenshot somewhere of it, like of the conversation. I was just like so proud,
That's really great, especially for a kid. Like those kinds of things can really be hurtful, and they can stay with you for a long time. Thank you for that, host, Just Angel. I appreciate it. Forever saying y'all, so that's a giveaway. I say y'all as well, quite a bit. And it's okay. But yeah, that can be totally life-changing. I mean, just the ability to have the confidence to stand up to someone who's calling you a dork, but also like It's nerd time, okay? It is nerd time right now. Everyone loves Game of Thrones. Everybody's playing D&D. Like, this is our time to freaking shine.
It's
so,
time for the
so own
underdog.
it. Yes, absolutely. It's time for the underdogs. 100%. So, on the topic of grief and loss, you lost your parents at a young age. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, both of my parents passed away very quickly when I was 9. And I also have a younger sister as well.
Hmm.
And it has been quite a struggle. It has been very, very hard on both of us. But we handle grief very differently. And so it's very interesting how we evolved, how we grew up, and how we handle things and it went into different branches, so to
Hmm.
speak. So when our parents, were gone, we ended up separating. Like we live with two different aunts across
Oh,
town from
wow.
each other. And at the funeral, I bawled. Like there was so much tears. Like I felt like my whole face was going to fall off. Like I was crying. I sang at the funeral
My gosh.
and everything too. And it was very heartfelt and touching. And then my sister's just sitting there all like stone face, like unaffected, just like I'm so bored looking on her face. And I'm like, oh boy, And I
Yeah.
thought that she was okay, because I was so young. I thought, oh, she's all right,
No tears.
no tears. But it ended up being very different. When she got into her more teenage years, she started hanging out with a girl who cut herself. And so
Uh,
she began to cut herself too and go through that self-harm. And then she tried to commit suicide like multiple times and what almost had to be institutionalized. It was really, really a
wow.
tough thing where I remember my aunts were saying to her, if you hurt yourself one more time, we're going to lock you up. Like it was to that point where it was just, she was crumbling and she didn't talk to me at all during this. Like she was completely isolating. I was like, hey, are you okay? And she's just like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm like, okay, you know? Um, and that was really hard to deal with. At some point when I think I was 18, she got into this fit where she told me that it was my fault that they died and
Wow.
went into like a rage about it and demanded that I apologize to her.
Can you tell me what the age difference is?
3 years difference.
3 years. Okay. And she's older?
She's younger.
She's younger. Okay. All right.
Mhm. Yeah, 3 years difference. So, yeah, she was definitely really traumatized by this, and I told her when she approached me and said, "It's your fault," and I'm like, "How?" And she couldn't explain it, because
Right.
it wasn't. I know that, my aunts were encouraging me, telling me, "Just say it's your fault so that way she doesn't hurt herself anymore,"
Are you
put her
kidding?
that's what they were
Oh,
telling me to do. And I
wow.
said, "No, it's not my fault. I'm not gonna take responsibility for this. This is not on me." And so I said, "No, it's not my fault, but you have to fix this. Like, there's something wrong right here with you. Like, it's not me, it's you." Like, I had a discussion with her. And so for years, we didn't talk. It was a very, very divided relationship because of what had happened. But also, just backtracking, when my parents were alive, I was the favorite kid. I was the kid who was like the little angel who was like, yeah, I'll go along with everything. And she was like the bad kid, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of the blame that she shifted was put on to me because it's like, well, you could have prevented it. Why did you have to be the way that you were?
Mhm.
A lot of comparison too and a
Yeah.
lot of jealousy as well. But the thing is that interestingly, there is a good thing that's going to happen soon with this story. So, as we got older, I decided to go straight into working. I did not go
Mhm.
to college. I went straight into the workforce. And she went the college route. And she actually studied to become a psychologist. And,
Wow.
yeah, she actually has her bachelor's of the arts in psychology right now, which is phenomenal because
That's
she's like
awesome.
she eventually grew up to the point where she's, like, letting go of it, and she was like, "I want to help others who are dealing with this," and we eventually made up. Like, it's not a perfect relationship right now,
Yeah.
but what she ended up doing was she apologized fully and said, "I shouldn't have put you in that position. I was in a really bad place." Like, she transformed her life, and what's really cool, I feel like she was gonna be a permanent student because she kept on getting her degree. She has, I think, a PhD or close to a PhD right
Mhm.
now, but she's not teaching psychology. She's just a nurse, so
Mhm.
or a doctor or something. I don't know. But what she's doing is helping others, working in medical, trying to save
Mhm.
lives, trying to give back, and make a difference, make an impact. And I'm very proud of her.
Yeah.
That I hold no like ill will or anything. I'm just really proud of her being able to say, "Look, I was in a bad place. I'm sorry. I was
Mhm.
wrong," and
That's
move
really
forward.
incredible.
Yeah, but it's very interesting how, the event occurred. We both were there, but we handled it completely differently, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Well, and it sounds like, your sister went through a lot and maybe that the people around you weren't as supportive as they needed to be of either of you, especially if
Mhm.
they're saying, you should take on the blame when it's not, you're not to blame. And then also your sister probably wasn't getting the right support if they were saying in response to very much lashing out, well, we're going to lock you up. Like those are things that are really hard to hear, especially if y'all were kids. I mean, that's hard. That's really hard.
Well, the issue I had with living with my aunts is I was very grateful to live with them, but a lot of times they would hold that over my head too, like, "You could be an orphan right now, but we
Oh
took you in,"
no.
kinda thing, and they
Oh man.
also would talk about my parents and, like, they made this mistake and that mistake, and I'm like, "Oh boy," and 3 months after they passed, they actually told me to get over it. They told me, "Close the book." I was 9,
3
I
months
don't 3
after your
months.
parents died.
Both of them. They told me, "It's done, it's over, you need to figure something out." Like, I wasn't allowed to be sad. And so, it took me a really long time in order to have that grieving process because I felt like I wasn't allowed to grieve. I actually
Wow.
took a lot of exercise for my grief, and I started roller skating, for 9 hours a week, and I lost a lot of weight during that time because of, the roller skating, the activity.
Yeah, that's a really intense thing for sure. Bite
Yeah.
Mark says, do your aunts accept sternly worded letters? Because I feel the need to write some. No kidding. No kidding.
I know it wasn't ideal at all. I think it was a lot involving their own personal feelings towards it instead of coming from a place of compassion,
Hmm.
saying, "I can't imagine being in your shoes right now." It was like, "Well, I remember back in the '70s when they did this," or something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Those kinds of statements are very rarely actually helpful. Back in my day, well, it's not your day anymore. We've hopefully improved and grown since then. So you said that you and your sister handled that loss very differently. Did that impact your own grieving process? It sounds like a lot of things kind of had an impact on your reactions, but did your
Mhm.
sister having such a different reaction impact you in any way?
I don't think so too much. I think, because we were so separate, living separately, she eventually moved to Texas, and so living in Texas. She's lived in Texas for many years, so I only
Hmm.
see her once a year now. So it's kind of good because she gets on my nerves, to be
Yeah.
honest. So
What sister
sisters,
doesn't?
like seriously, she'll just like wake me up and just start poking me, and I'm like, go away, like that type of annoyance.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it's playful. And so we get along to some extent, not perfect, but as
Yeah.
long as she doesn't poke me, I'm good.
Well, see,
But
I have two sisters. They're both younger. I'm the oldest. And I love them both to pieces, but we can't live together. Period. End of story. Like that's the thing. I can love you as long as we're not living together. That's it. I've never been annoying in my life. Perfect angel. That's
oh my
funny,
god,
bite mark. Yeah, it's one of those things that having siblings is great. It's also great to have some distance from your siblings sometimes, for sure.
sometimes I think a big part of the process though was I don't this is a tough one. I've never really talked to her about the death that much, like
Hmm.
here and there, but we haven't really shared because it's really hard for her right now. Like if I like on the anniversary of that, like she is very emotional and sends me a bunch of emotional gifts, but I'm okay. So I think she's still dealing with it more than I am, but I also have memory loss from that event. Like I can't remember everything from being
Yeah.
there. So that has helped me, and it's such a cool thing, like, I love it. I know it sounds crazy to love memory loss, but
After
it's
a
a
traumatic
defense
event, though, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
bits and pieces here and there, but otherwise, like, it's most of it's wiped. So, it starts like the funeral onward for the most part.
Right.
So I'm like, cool. It's just easier for me to process it. But
Mhm.
another thing you can use if you are dealing with a loss is to look at it as a good thing. Like, I wouldn't be as independent as I am. I wouldn't be, as
Yeah.
assertive, and I wouldn't have learned the life skills to get me to where I am now if it weren't for that. And so, in a way, it was a blessing. In a way,
Yeah.
it was something that was necessary for me to grow. And I feel like I
Right.
would be stunted if they were still alive today.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if you can take away something positive, in a lot of cases, it does propel growth. And I mean, that's why we're here doing this tonight, because I had a great loss in 2017 that I was inspired by. And so without that, it's one of those things like that completely changed. It didn't completely change the trajectory of my entire life, but it did do several different things that I can point to and say, were it not for that, this would not be. And this is one of those things. So Link Attack, hey, welcome. We're talking about grief and loss tonight. So any comments or questions that you have, feel free to pop them in. Alex has a question. He says, what positive inner dialogue did or do you have to drown out the negative things your family said?
Well, I've actually come to terms with them. My aunts are still living, and I still talk to them, but not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah.
And they I understand where they were coming from. They were coming from a place of control because everything just seems so out of control. And so I tell myself that even though it wasn't the best way to handle it, and I wasn't in their shoes and they weren't in mine,
Hmm.
So I look at it as they just they didn't know how to parent anymore because they were way older too. Like
Hmm.
all their kids were grown, like really grown. So going back to being a parent again and everything like that, especially for a different generation than their
Yeah.
kids were, is a big, big deal. My mom was 1 of 9 or something ridiculous. And so
What?
a lot of family or something. And I lost track. There's
That's a
too
lot.
many of them. There's way too many. And so, like, because of that, there's a huge age difference. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't all back to back,
Mm.
sometimes 10 or 15-year difference. And so they may be more traditional or they may be a little bit harder, like old school. And I know that I'm not trying to justify their actions per se,
Sure.
but I can come from a place of compassion saying they may just not understand, kids at that age and how they would grieve. Like, if I were dealing with a child right now that were grieving, I would know a little bit, but I may not be able to help fully.
Hmm.
And back then, in regards to mental health, therapy wasn't the normal. It
Right.
wasn't even talked about. It wasn't even done.
Yeah.
I didn't go to therapy. I went to therapy for a bit because of the loss, but I didn't go to therapy until much later, until I was like 16.
Hmm.
So that isn't something that it's kind of like just sweep it under the rug, deal with it, be tough, continue. That was the
Right.
dialogue. And that's what they grew up in their generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's not necessarily that you're trying to justify that their actions were correct, but you're giving them, like, putting it into perspective, I think, is to say, like, uh, their understanding was this, my understanding was this, and looking back now, I can see what they were trying to express and the fact that it was flawed in this way and that way. And I think that affirming that to yourself is a really important thing sometimes, looking back. Love to talk death. Yes, Link Attack. It's to die for. Oh my God, I love you. I am here for puns.
Diabolical. Sorry.
Yes, it's great. I love it. Absolutely. So, what was your biggest challenge after the loss of your parents?
I honestly think that managing, all my different aunts and uncles and stuff, but finding my independence. I know that I was very young when they passed, but I did
Hmm.
not have any skills. I did not know how to do dishes or laundry or any basic things in life. I was that kid that would cling to their parents' legs as their parents would walk. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the kind of person I was. And I was very, very shy,
Hmm.
if you can believe it. I was actually shy and really afraid of people. I was like, what are people thinking about me? And getting over that, overcoming that was a huge challenge at the time, which now I'm like, I don't really care.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a liberating experience to decide just not to care what other people think. It's nice, but not everyone can do it, and that's understandable as well.
I do think that some people with age can become stronger in that regard. I think at a certain point, you're just like, I don't care. Everyone's,
Mhm.
they see my good side, my bad side. I'm just going to be me.
Yeah. Well, and what's what's nice for me, I know this isn't necessarily about body positivity, but if you look at it in a perspective of things like body positivity and the fact that none of your friends are friends with you because of the shape of your body, like it's such a nice thing to actually realize. And it's the same thing with any of your personality. Like they're not friends with you because of one specific thing. They're friends with you because of you as a whole person. And it's nice to be like, you know what, that's worth something. Me as a whole person, I'm worth something. So do you feel that there's any specific right or wrong way to grieve after a loss?
Not necessarily. I think that everybody is different with the way that they handle it, and each loss is different, and sometimes they're slow, and sometimes you can kind of anticipate it, and sometimes it's really quick, and you're like, whoa, I just got kind of, sidelined by that. And sometimes you instantly cry, and sometimes it takes a few years to cry, you know, and sometimes you carry it with you, and sometimes you're able to say, I am able to release it pretty quickly. It really depends on your mindset. It
Yeah.
really depends on your outlook and your ability to handle it. But there's so much expectation in our society to close the book, to immediately heal or overcome, that we sometimes rush it. And another point this is a huge thing, by the way, is we're so distracted now more than ever. Like when
Hmm.
my parents died, the internet really wasn't a thing. Okay. But like now we have our cell phones, we have television, everything else that's distracting us. And we're also even busier because now instead of working one job, you have to work two, three jobs just
Hmm.
to keep afloat. So being constantly busy, we don't take time to have introspection. We don't
Yeah.
have time to really look inward and process these emotions. So they get swept under the rug. And it's more comfortable like that anyway. And so we just continue to sweep and to sweep, and then they build up and we burst. And that's what's happening a lot. We'll see more and more of this because we aren't giving ourselves that time to reflect. And
Yeah.
that's something we need more than ever right now.
Yeah, and especially after a loss, you also have people saying that, well, you were saying that, 3 months after the loss of your parents, your aunts were saying that you needed to get over it kind of thing. And it's hard to say, all right, you need to let go of your grief when grief isn't something that just comes and go. Or I mean, it isn't something that just goes. Like it can hit you the next day, it can hit you, like you were saying, 5 years from now. And it's one of those like it's almost ever present in the background sometimes, especially if it was a huge loss. And I think that a lot of us, especially right now, and good question there, Link, also, but I think a lot of us, especially right now, like there's always something that we're grieving on some level, and it's hard to accept that. Link says with COVID happening, it feels like we're going through a mass death, mass grief event. How do you tell people that their current feelings might be grief and how to cope with those feelings? That's a good question. I will just point out that neither of us are professional mental health workers. However, that being said, we're happy to provide some things that have worked for us. So I'll let you address that.
In regards to COVID-19, it's really hard because even though it started last year, it came on real suddenly, and we had to make a lot of lifestyle changes, and so much has changed so quickly too. It's kind of like everything's on fire right now.
Mm.
And so we're at the same time that we're grieving the loss of normal, we're being forced to accept a new normal. And then we're not even sure if this new normal is going to be the new normal. And so it's a really hard time for a lot of people right now. But what I
Yeah.
can say for you, if you're really struggling with this, in my opinion, find people who lift you up so you don't feel so alone in this. People who will encourage you, who they may be feeling scared too, but at least you can come
Hmm.
together and share your ideas, because just because we're 6 feet apart doesn't mean that we are distant. We can still can connect to people and share ideas and share our struggles, and then feel like, hey, together we can get through this. Together we are stronger. And so that's my number one suggestion with COVID-19 right now, because there's a lot out of our control, but what we can control is our own mindset. What we can control is our reaction to it. And creating those bonds creates such a strong foundation. And if we know that we're okay to get through this, we can get through anything.
Absolutely. I would add also that just grief is not something that everyone goes through the same. Like Victoria was saying, she and her sister went through it completely differently. But also, like, you can exist in multiple stages, quote unquote,
Mhm.
of grief at the same time, and they don't go in any specific order. So it's very non-linear. All right, so just listen to what Bite said, because that's what I was kind of trying to say there. But when I talked about grief with my therapist, she brought up that grief is cyclical. You can process and move forward and still be affected by it again in the future. Absolutely. I had a dream the other day about my grandfather who passed away in December. And it's while we actually had a lot of grieving while he was alive too, because he had such a drawn out death due to breast cancer. And there was a lot of adjusting and grieving that while he was even still alive and in the hospital. And then fortunately, this wasn't during COVID, and we were able to have a nice big service and be supported and all of that. It's a lot different now when you can't go and be surrounded with your loved ones necessarily as you would in quote unquote normal times, which what are those anymore? But even so, even though I feel like I have processed through my grief related to Grandpa, and even though he was very comfortable with his death, and even though we talked about his death and like all this, like we were very open about, he was a funeral director and also a pastor in his church, so he was used to talking about death. And it's still, after I had a dream about him, like I woke up in just tears. And it's like, you still have to recognize that and honor it and give it space still. I mean, you can't just say, I'm over that, let's not think about it, kind of thing.
I recently talked to somebody who is a mortician, I believe, or she works in some regard in a funeral home. And I asked her, has working with dead people helped you face your own mortality? And she said no. She says, I'm scared as hell about it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people are. A lot of people are really terrified. He was a mortician. He was also, he did the services and things for the funerals and everything. And I think he was more comfortable with it. I think his faith really helped him be more comfortable with it. But that's just also who he was, very accepting, very, very open to talking about just about anything except for sex. Don't talk about sex with him. Like, it's not a thing.
Does not exist.
Anything. Autumn said, I'm still learning how to grieve because I am going to mispronounce that. Alexithymia often deprives me of knowledge about what I'm feeling. I thought I was desensitized, but now I'm not so sure. Autumn, can you tell me a little bit about that? I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm not familiar. He wasn't okay with his own blood. That's true. That's true. He was not. Link said, yeah, I've noticed a lot of people talking about their feelings and thoughts and behaviors lately. And I'm like, that's grief. You're grieving. You need to let it happen and not pretend it's not happening. Stop shaming yourself for grieving. Ooh, grief shame. Grief shame is such a thing. Like, people are ashamed to admit that they're grieving. And I think that that's so silly.
That can stem from comparison a lot, because you'll say, like, for my sister and I, it's like, I got over it really quick is what it looks like from the outside in, especially living apart. But then she was still feeling it. And that may be what led to her self-harming, was because she's like, I need to feel something different other than this pain inside of me,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Really close. I'm so horrible at pronunciations. So does what you've lived through help you relate to others in some way? Are there times where your background and life experiences have really helped you connect to someone else?
No, not quite. I haven't met very many people with a similar journey in that regard, life experiences, but that's okay. I just hope that my story here helps someone. I hope that it makes someone realize that you can be in the darkness and dig out and find the light, that where you are right now, you don't have to be stuck there. You have the capability of going beyond your perceived limitations, honestly. And everything changes. I remember being with one of my aunts, different one, in the car one day when I was like 12. And at random, she said to me, Vicky, nothing is forever. I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, everything ends at some point. I'm like, okay, random thought. All right. But it really got me thinking, like, this is temporary. It may be cyclical. It may last longer than what I expect, but everything ends at some point. And you kind of have to look at it that way, is whenever I decide to release it, kind of like capturing a butterfly, and then you decide to release it back so it can fly again,
Yeah. Okay, so it literally means no words for feelings. It's something that happens to people on the autism spectrum who have ADHD or otherwise neurodivergent. Trying to figure out how I'm feeling is like trying to grab a single leaf out of a dust devil and describe exactly what tree it came from. Wow. So impossible is what you're saying. Really, really, really difficult. That sounds really difficult. But yeah, I mean,
can you express yourself in a different way? Maybe instead of speaking, maybe artwork, or maybe writing? Is there a different medium that works for you?
Hey, Waddles, we're talking about grief and loss tonight. Welcome on in. So I think also just on the kind of the grief shame part of it, right now it's really hard to say to someone, you're grieving the loss of normal in COVID-19. You're literally what you're experiencing right now, what you're describing to me is grief, because they're like, no, that's not it. It's something else. It's something else. And it's like it's so hard to get people to understand that, well, actually kind of is grief, and that's okay. It's okay for it to be grief. So you've really examined loss from many angles. And can you talk a little bit about the other losses you experienced? I think that that'll tie in really well to what we're talking about with COVID and kind of that loss of normal as well.
Well, I mean, loss comes in many forms. It could be losing a job. It could be a relationship that ended, like crashed down on the rocks. But we can also lose ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, we aren't the same person we were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so, because of this, like, we're constantly evolving, which is the coolest thing, by the way, constantly becoming stronger, learning more about ourselves. But sometimes we have to let go of previous versions of ourselves that no longer exist.
Mm.
Like when I was 19, that's when I was like flourishing. Okay, I was very emotionally immature. But what was really great about that time was I had an amazing sense of style. Okay. It was definitely on fleek that way. I was writing poetry all the time. I was a lot more fit than I am now. Like everything just seemed easier. And
Mhm.
so it took me a really long time to release that person that I no longer am, to accept who I am right now.
Mhm.
Because life gets complicated. And so you kind of wish, if only I could have been that person again. But that person no longer exists. And that's been one of the hardest struggles for me personally.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I'm actually finding easier with COVID-19. And granted, some of this isn't kind of tied to me getting divorced and everything too, but like I used to be a pretty different person, and I found myself without like the pressures of having to fit in or anything with other people on a daily basis or do things that other people are doing kind of thing because it's like society expects it sort of thing. I can just be me and I can just be how I want. And it's like, it's really nice. And for me, it's grieving the years in between when I last felt like really, truly myself. And part of that is a bad relationship. And part of that is just allowing myself to let go of what I really enjoyed and liked. But yeah.
I will say that after my parents died, because I didn't have a male role model, I did get into some relationships that were less than ideal. Just I had daddy issues, okay? Straight up. And so I dated somebody for many years and who broke my heart, and it was really really hard to let go of that because he was there very early on, like when I was like 12, okay? Until I was like 19 or 20. So it's a
Hmm.
really long period of time where he helped me grieve that loss. And so he became like part of who I was. And I associated my own self worth and my own identity with this person. And
Hmm.
then when he was no longer in my life, that was one of the hardest things. And I missed that. I missed that time in my life when everything was really good between us because I didn't know who I was without that person, too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tie your own self-worth to someone else, but it's easy. It's a hard thing to come out from, but it's an easy thing to do, if that makes sense. That hits hard, doing well, job financially right after high school and then totally struggling a decade later, feeling like I failed. No, I'm growing and changing and the world kind of sucks right now. Yes, and that's out of my hands and I can still grow. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. To be fair, I don't have daddy issues and still got into a bad relationship, so don't feel bad. Same. So much the same. I had great male role models, great ones, and still like shitty relationships sometimes happen. But yeah. So what are your thoughts? We've already talked about it a little bit. What are your thoughts on death positivity?
I think that death positivity, as in seeing it from a good light.
Yeah, so there's a death positivity movement that really focuses on preparing for death and talking openly about death. And even whenever someone does die, like talking openly about their death and talking openly about their corpse and like what's going to happen to the body of someone. And it's a real kind of push to be more open about this thing that we all experience and all go through.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a very good thing because experiencing some emotional pain now can save us a lot of emotional pain later.
Hmm.
I look at it like children. I don't have any kids, but
You want some? I'll give
I'll
you. I'll
take
give you
your
some.
dog. Just trade, yeah. I have a dog. We'll just trade.
That's fine.
But if eventually someday I decide to have children, I do want to instill in them a little bit of sense of loss. Like some people won't get animals for their kids because they're afraid the animals are going to die and then the kid's not going to be able to handle it.
Hmm.
But and a lot of times, they just throw out the animal or get rid of the animal. Like, instead of you seeing, "Hey, it's dead, let's have a proper ceremony for it. Let's grieve. Let's process this." And as a kid, I didn't have any pets. I wasn't allowed. So, except for some stray cats, but they don't count. But the issue is that, we need to prepare as much as possible and not to become desensitized, but just to learn to find our way of accepting it. Finding this works for me. Let me tap into that. Most emotions that we experience are something that has been a part of a timeline. Like if you're angry right now, you've been angry before. And there's an instance before that and before that. It's just a pattern that repeats itself. Therefore, if you figure out how you cope personally with grief, when you're feeling that sensation again, instead of pushing it away, you can kind of embrace it and then you're better able to process it at that point.
Yeah. I guess I mean, we had pets growing up and we had a little pet graveyard because we had things like rabbits and they die every few years. So, except for
Mhm.
one, we had one who lived to be like 7 years old. That was insane. But so we had small pets and small pets tend to die more frequently. I guess I never really considered that maybe some kids couldn't handle. We have a dog who's about to die and we've had one dog who did die who's buried in the backyard. But, it's one of those things whenever our dog was dying, like at the time, he was like 2. Maybe 3. I had him come say goodbye to her before she died. And so it's like, I guess I've never considered that some parents legitimately use that as a reason not to get a pet.
Mhm.
I think that that's interesting. But I can definitely see some people doing that
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
Ask a Mortician's a great channel for that. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I've
that
seen
is
that before.
that is a really good channel. Hello Rats can't, but I can't stand them only living for 3 to 4 years. Yeah, and the smaller the animal, well, except for reptiles, the smaller the animal, the less time they tend to live. So it is one of those things. Like if you have rabbits or ferrets or mice or hamsters or guinea pigs, like all of those, they live just such a short time. But yeah, so the dog he's very old. He will be 13 this year, and
Oh,
he's a
wow.
Weimaraner. So he's a Weimaraner. So he's a larger dog, and
Mhm.
their lifespan is typically like 9 to 11 years. And so
Mhm.
he is well over that, and he's like starting to have a hard time. So we've talked to all the kids, like, he's gonna die soon. It's okay. Like, this is what happens. So I think that just being open to talking about it is really important. And I do think that if you are able to talk about it and you are able to plan for it, I think that it can really do some real good. Lincoln Tech said, I used to desperately want a pet octopus, but they only live like 2 years. They're also wicked smart.
Really?
Wicked smart. There's a story, I will have to find it, of an octopus who its keeper gave him like 12 shrimp, and one of the shrimp was bad, and the keeper didn't know it. The octopus took the shrimp, got out of its aquarium tank that was secure, got itself to the keeper's office, threw the shrimp at the keeper, and then went and got back into its tank. It's incredible. They're so smart. I'll have to find that. Let's see. Octopus escape shrimp. I'll bet that'll get it. True octopus stories from around the world. So if you're interested in
It sounds like a Twitch clip title. You know how you click something and it has like random words?
yes. These are amazing stories. How dare you serve this swill? Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what happened. I'm sure of it. So if you could go back in time and say one thing to your former self 5 years ago in relation to loss or grief, what would it be?
I know this is going to sound weird, but I think I would say to myself, nobody cares, because I mean, there are people who do care. Absolutely. There are people like close friends and family. But me just breaking down in the middle of a shopping center, nobody understands and nobody truly cares. But you have to find those in your life who do care about you, who understand you and can have a level of compassion for you. Because as you know, like I didn't have that from my aunts that much. And they were acting like more like it was like privilege, to be living with them. So they were kind of transfixed on that. And to find those people, I would say find the people who care. Find the people who are there for you and lift you up because it was a very lonely experience. And I'm learning more and more the power of people coming together, joining up and having moments together, you know?
hmm That's definitely something that I think if you can find the people who truly care to be really open about, but also if you're breaking down in the middle of a mall or something, I would hope that most people would have compassion if you say, I just lost my parents or something, or I'm just grieving. Honestly, I really feel strongly that you should just be able to say, I'm grieving and not have anyone press you any further than that. But that's just me, like pipe dream over here. That's just me.
Well, I will say it's given me compassion with other people who are grieving. For example, because I work in public relations, there was this woman who she came up to me just shouting and I'm like, hi, just like she was like really angry and aggressive, looked like she was about to swing at me, just really
Wow.
heated over something. And I'm like, let me try to serve you. Let me try to correct this. But, she was really in a moment. And later on that day, she came back to me and she said, "I'm so sorry. I just lost my dad.
Wow.
And I didn't mean to come at you like that, but that was coming from a place where I just didn't know how to handle it. I'm so sorry." And
Right.
she bawled. And I hugged her and I
Oh,
said, "It's okay." And finding that forgiveness in our heart, we don't know the experience that person's going through. Most people are like, "That's an angry Karen" or something, but no. Um these are people. These
hmm
are people with emotions. These are people who are going through something who we can never see everything inside of that window.
yeah,
They may give us a little
absolutely.
peek, but we'll never fully understand or embody that. And
Yeah.
we're not supposed to.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And you don't know everyone's life. They don't know yours either. I tried to do that. Not that I drive anywhere these days, but I try to do that whenever I'm driving and somebody cuts me off. I'm like, you know what? Maybe their wife is pregnant and they're going to deliver the baby. I just don't know what's going on in their life. I mean, I still yell at them. Don't get me wrong. But once I'm done yelling at them for cutting me off with my windows up, but not where they can hear me. But then I'm like, you know what? It's okay. Maybe their mom is dying and they have to go. Whatever it is,
You never know.
I hope that it turns out fine. But yeah, it's hard. You must really need to poop. Oh my God, I'm going to use that. I'm totally going to use that link. I use the wow, you must really need to poop in the car. That's great. That is great. So, Beta has a comment. They said, you mentioned that everything is temporary, including our time here in this form of living. In what ways do you make sure you are making the best of your time and energy here so that we celebrate your life and mourn it and not mourn it?
I think that that's such a great point where we need to make the most of our time because we don't know. Like, I don't know if I have 10 minutes or if I have an hour or if I have 10 years. Like, we have no idea what could
Mm-hmm.
happen. And so make today, matter. We always have a window each day to make a difference, to connect with people, to do the thing, cleaning out our garage. We've been saying wanted to clean out our garage for a week. We need to do it today. So many people and they put off things and say, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Well, there may not be a tomorrow. And so sometimes, you have to say, hey, I want to try to transform this energy, this time, and make it worth it. In my opinion, the best ways to spend time and is connecting with others, is to really create those relationships, those bonds, and create more love in the world. If you project positivity, if you project love and light, is what you'll receive. And so the more that we inject that into the world, the better we can make the world. And I wholeheartedly believe it only takes one person to start a movement. It only takes one person to make change. So if you go out there and you are really standing up for what you believe in, you're embracing others, you're having conversations, you are changing the world and you may not even know it. And so that's what you can do right now. Anyone can do it. Everybody has a voice.
Absolutely. We've talked about that so many times. You never know what is going to speak to someone else. You never know what nice thing, like a tiny little nice thing that you say to somebody, it can make their entire day and make them smile. And if you make them smile, then they might make someone else smile. And it's just that chain reaction that you don't even get to see. Like, you don't even get to know that it happened, but it's out there and it made the world a better place. Very briefly, life lesson from Mama's Mental Health Monday stream today. Clean out your garage. Listen. I did something really simple this weekend having to do with my backyard, and it made me feel instantly so much better. And I've been putting it off for like a month. Like, putting it off, it was something that took me an hour to do. And as soon as it was done, I felt so much better. And I'm like, why have I been avoiding this for a month?
But that's a great thing, though, because you tackled it now, you feel like the weight off your shoulders. And so now you may feel happier, more vibrant, and you may be able to share that energy with others because you're no longer burdened by that thing,
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Yes, absolutely. Definitely need to hear that about my trans neurodiversity and disability advocacy. Yes, absolutely. Bite Mark has another question. She said, what is your favorite poem? Not really related to anything. Just been asking all the guests that I'm here for.
Roses are red, violets are blue. If you haven't followed me yet, follow MommaFoxFire too.
That's perfect. Can I get a shout out for her for that again? Let's shout out her Twitch channel. So if you guys aren't following it, go follow her.
I'm the next Shakespeare right here, okay?
Well, I'm here for it. I am here for it. I'm here for your humor, most definitely. So these are weird ass times. We've already kind of talked about this, but just, do you have any advice for others who are struggling with a loss right now in the time of 2020 being the bitch that it is? What would you say to someone who's struggling with a loss? Maybe not a death, or maybe a death. Do you have any advice for anyone out there?
Well, like I mentioned before, it's a lot of coming together, finding those who lift you up, sharing experiences, even if you're at different points of loss. But there's another big point. There's something called comparative suffering, where we compare our suffering to somebody else's. Like, for example, we'll say, I'm not allowed to feel this way because someone has it a lot worse. Like, I lost my job, but this person's homeless. Therefore, I'm not allowed to feel. And so it's a lot of pushing our own feelings aside in order to kind of honor and care about others. But we're allowed to feel the way that we feel. And even if it's something minuscule, like, let's just say you go to the supermarket, but because of COVID, they didn't get in your shipment of something and you feel upset about this. You're allowed to feel upset about it. You're allowed to have that emotion. And sure, there's always going to be somebody who has it better than you. There's always going to be somebody who has it worse than you. But you can't focus on that, but focus on how you're feeling and processing that. Because a lot of times we'll spend so much energy focused on what other people are doing, their journey, they're suffering, or they're not suffering, they're flourishing. And so we're so focused on them, we don't internalize, like we don't look at ourselves. And so a lot of people are actually handling it that way because they don't know how to face themselves.
I love talking about comparative suffering because this is one of those things that if you're going to say, I can't be sad because someone else is sadder, then also you're never able to be happy because someone else is always happier. Like, you have to look at it from the other side too. And when you put it into that perspective, it makes zero sense. Like, no sense. You can be happy that they got your product in at the store. You can be sad that they got your product in at the store. What you're happy or sad about has nothing to do with what someone else might be happy or sad about. And Bite Mark, I have the Jamaican patties in my freezer if you want to come get some. If you want to not be upset about it, I can order you some extra ones because they have them here. But yeah, it's one of those things that we like to say, I don't have it that bad, but you can still be upset about not having it that bad, but having it worse than you had it yesterday or a month ago or last year or whatever. It's okay to do that.
I think a really big part of handling any kind of loss is celebrating the small wins. Like, let's just say you're really dealing with a high level of depression, but you got out of bed this morning. Then you need to cheer yourself on. You need to say, hey, look, I did something today. I
Mhm.
made progress, even if that progress is slow. So many times we get into this mindset of comparison again, where we're like, well, that person was able to do this, but they're not you. They didn't go through what you have. They haven't stepped foot in your shoes. So everybody is going to be different with what they're capable of doing, what they're going to do today. But what you can do is celebrate as much as possible. Be like, I wrote something today, you know, or I stood up to somebody today. Like every little thing counts because success isn't just one big thing. It's the
Mhm.
culmination of a lot of little things, our daily habits that
Yep.
position us into that success. And so, if we want movement, if we want change, if we want to move the needle for ourselves, if we want growth and personal development, we have to celebrate those small wins and let them build up until we experience that burst and that full vibrancy and that full movement.
Absolutely. And it's really important also to teach younger kids to also do that. Like, I cannot stress how many times my son will be like, okay, I'm not getting anything done today. I just feel so bad. And I'm like, well, let's look at what you actually did today. And then we'll talk about it. And he's like, actually, yeah, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And all those things are good. And like, it completely, you can see his mind shift over from like feeling crappy about himself to feeling like, okay, maybe actually my day is not going so bad. So just kind of reframing it, I think, helps too sometimes.
Sometimes.
Even to the extent of I bought the game Battleship for my kids because I realized that we didn't have it and it was on sale on Amazon and Amazon knows me too well and they put it in my suggestions. So I
Mhm.
I bought it and they were playing it tonight and he got upset when his brother sunk one of his battleships. Then he got really happy whenever he sunk one of his brother's battleships and like it goes back and forth. And at the end of it, he was like 2 moves away from beating his brother and then his brother won. And so he got really upset and I'm like, "Hang on. Wasn't it fun to have those little wins along the way?" And he was like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, actually, yeah, it was." And so then they played something else. And it's like
Mhm.
he just completely discounted everything that had just happened. So you
Mhm.
gotta recognize those and give them that room to be celebrated.
Absolutely. Like you don't have to be the best at something,
Hmm.
and I'm not the best at Hearthstone, which is my favorite video game, but I play it a lot and I just enjoy the process. I think it's really important to savor that. You may not enjoy every aspect of the
Hmm.
process, but to as a whole say, "Hey, this is teaching me something," or "I'm just having fun." And really appreciate that for what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Link attack said, "Save your judgments for actions, not feelings. Just let the feels be." I love that
Mhm.
because you can't necessarily control your feelings. What you can control are your actions. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Bite Mark said, "What other games do you enjoy?"
I don't have a whole lot of time for gaming. I play Hearthstone because it's on my phone, and so it's good for on the go. But if I ever have downtime, I play Roller Coaster Tycoon Original. Mhm.
I love those games. Bite Mark really loves those games too. Kind of the building management games. My favorite video game is buggy as hell, so I have to just enjoy the fun parts. Yeah. I mean, I play RuneScape, so I'm not great at it, but it's fun.
That's the thing. You just have to have fun.
Yeah.
So many times we're trying to turn our hobbies into like entrepreneurial ventures. Where we're trying to take something that's supposed to be fun and make it a business, but we don't have to. Let's bring
Yeah.
back hobbies. Let's do things that we enjoy that make us feel good because when we're spending time doing that, then we feel more in the zone and then we're
Hmm.
able to do other things. We're able to serve others in a better way with more energy.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So if you could wave a magic wand, I give everyone a magic wand every stream and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness or talking about grief and loss or mental health in general, what would it be?
Well, first of all, is this the Disney Channel? It's like you're giving
It
me a
is.
wand.
Yes. Here
Like,
you go. I'm handing it to you.
thank you.
We'll
I wish
pretend
I
like it's
had.
it's the fan.
It's a great question about any kind of stigma regarding mental health. I think I'm going to go with the streamer response of streamers are not therapists, and a lot of people have been shouting this out for the rooftops lately. But and this also goes with something else where people are not dumping grounds either.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say. But setting boundaries is a really important, whether you're a content creator or not. Saying, this is what I will allow in. This is something that I do not accept. And because I'm your friend, it does not give you room to just dump everything because you don't know if I'm okay. And a lot of people don't check first,
Yeah.
or they're like, hey, how are you? You're like, I'm good. And then they're just like, here's everything. Can I curse? Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It's like, here's my shit sandwich,
Right.
And I think that we need to value ourselves enough to, if we find out that we're constantly being dumped on like that, that's a lot of weight to carry. I think we have to look at it as, I need to set boundaries. If that's constantly happening to you, you need to be very clear in communication with people. And if you're seeing that it's all one way, if it's all one sided, then that might not be the relationship for you. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you talk to someone, anyone, it's good to feel either neutral or empowered, or something, or uplifted in some regard. Not every conversation is going to be a banger, but you do want to leave with the sense of that you've gained something. But sometimes, people dump and it's really hard to deal with. So I would say that streamers are not therapists.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, be very mindful if you're going to open up with someone. Like, it's such a beautiful thing that people feel open enough to share those emotions, to share their vulnerabilities. And so it should be appreciated and handled with a lot of tact and care, because that's someone's mental health right there.
Yep.
But at the same
Absolutely.
time, you have to find that balance and say, hey, I'm doing something else. I'm in a different zone. I can't handle this today, you
Yeah.
know? And I think another great point is because, you focus on mental health. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a mindset coach. Just because we are in the field, not professionals, but we're in the field, does not mean we're any stronger than
Mm-hmm.
anyone else. I still am insecure. I
Yeah.
still have my flaws and I'm not perfect. And a lot of people, they throw at me. And so I've had to learn to set up those boundaries and not to protect myself, so that way I can give my best vibrancy and energy and love to the world, because otherwise it drains completely.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with my very best of friends, if I'm having a shit day, I still start off with, oh my fucking God, can I tell you something right now? And wait. And then wait. I wait for them, maybe not with Bite Mark. And I'm sorry, Bite Mark, that I dump on you a lot, but you know, it's you. So you're like my one safe space that I've never had you say no to something juicy. But even with my very best friends, I still ask, like, do you have capacity to talk about this? And I have some really good friends who they'll ask me, do you have space for me to just unload some shit on you? And 99% of the time, I'll say yes. But there is that 1% of the time where sometimes I'm like, can this wait? Like, are you in crisis right now? And maybe if you're in crisis, I can find you a resource. But if you're not in crisis, can this just wait a couple hours, a day, whatever it is? Or can you find someone else to talk to? And I've never had anyone say like, no, I have to tell you or we're not friends anymore. Like that's the other part of that, is that if you have someone who you are trying to set that boundary with and they push back on you, that's even more need for that boundary and maybe less need for that friend.
Well, I think that, for myself being a mindset coach, a lot of people associate that with being a mental health professional, which I am not. And so I deal with motivation and inspiration and success and dealing with emotions that may be blocks from us getting to our true potential. That's what I deal with. So sometimes them opening themselves up so much about what's blocking them, they feel like it's a way that they can just kind of throw it all out there. But then I do refer them to proper links if they're struggling, or I let them know, here's a professional that I know personally that can help you, because this is something that is beyond my area of expertise. It's beyond what I can help you with. And I want you to find the help that you need. I want you to have the resources that you need to become better.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's the reason that we have the not a pro, diagnose me, lifeline, domestic, like all of those commands in this channel. There's a reason that we have all of those, because I am an advocate. I am not a professional, and that does get confused sometimes. But Yeah, no, that is really important. That consent, consent for that is critically important. 100%.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will open it up to any remaining community Q&A. I'll just open the floor to you.
Mhm. Thank you. I think that right now, like I mentioned before, coming together and creating those bonds is so very important. I've noticed, let me tell you about a story.
I love
So I was
stories.
it's a short story, but it's all good. Years ago I spoke to somebody and he said to me the most interesting thing. He said, "The worst invention ever is the air conditioner." And I'm like, "What? How?" Keeps me cool, like, especially today, it's insanely hot here. And he's like, "Yeah, it was the air
Texas.
conditioner." He said that before the air conditioner, people used to go outside, they used to sit on each other on their porches, and they used to talk to each other. And now they no longer do that. They no longer congregate, and so they are losing those bonds. And although we're more social than ever because of social media, and we can instantly connect to people from across the world in split seconds, which is so cool, there's more distance than ever where people are feeling like they can't talk about their grief. They're feeling like they can't share when they're experiencing a loss, whether it be from comparing their loss to others, feeling it's just not important enough, there's worse world issues, etc. But do know that you're not alone in whatever space you're in. And that the more that we talk about these experiences and these feelings, the more that we share, the stronger we can become. We can open up those, that dialogue and we can become stronger. But I will mention one other thing. There's a lot of division of, I'm not going to get political or anything, but there's a lot of division of this side versus that side. And that is so harmful right now with the state of the world because one side feels like they can't even just have a discussion about anything with the other side, like not even as a human being. Like they can't tell somebody who's on an opposite, maybe political side that they're feeling depressed
Mhm.
because they feel like they're somebody else. They're, you know, separate from me. And we create these divisions, whether it be like male versus female or atheist versus Christianity. Like there's so many verses that we need to start combining and weaving together and saying, I may not agree with where you stand in this regard, but I can talk to you about this. And really having that, I feel like that's something that's really missing right now. And the more that we start to open ourselves up to that, the more we can become stronger, the better that we can become, and the more we can find solutions to these issues.
Yeah. I think that that's a great point. I'm friends. It's actually one of my parents' friends on Facebook, but we're friends on Facebook, and he and I we don't argue on Facebook about politics, but I post a lot of stuff that's politically related, and he comments a lot on it, with his view. And he actually just recently said, "Have you ever noticed that we disagree a lot, but we still are okay with each other? Like it's a weird," and he was saying like, this is a weird thing. It's not normal that you can do that. And it's nice. Like it's a nice, refreshing thing. Cause I've had a lot of people who they get mad. If I have a different view, they're mad, like immediately anger. And it's really nice to be able to say, look, we disagree, but humans are humans. And it's really cool that, we're just all the same creature.
Like right now, if you are not racist and you have a really, really racist grandma, still call her, okay? Just because she has differing views and you may not see eye to eye on a certain level, doesn't mean that you can't call her and ask her how she's feeling. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you can't send her something through the mail, or something, or take care of her. But there's so much division right now when we just need to start talking to each other. You can't change people. People are set in their ways. But what you can do is inspire people to change themselves.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
That friend and I talk in a similar way on Facebook. Yes. Yeah. No, he's very open to just talking. It's amazing. Not very many people are like that. I've actually had people who I knew from high school unfriend me on Facebook because they have opposing political views. I'm like, all right, whatever. I didn't need that. I didn't need that in my life anyway, if you're going to be like that. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It was a pleasure to have you on. Like Mark said, it's not necessarily your job to convince people that they shouldn't be racist, sexist, whatever. But if someone doesn't talk to them about it, they'll never change. That is also true. Just like, don't be hateful about it. That's the thing. When you're trying to talk to somebody about their views, if you are hateful about it, you will get nowhere. Sometimes if you're logical about it, you will still get nowhere, but that's different. I love when toxic people unfriendly. It's like the garbage took itself out. See, there you go. Thanks for that follow, Bates. I appreciate it. Great interview. Thank you. Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. You are an amazing person, and I'm so happy for this opportunity to share my views.
And that was my conversation with VictoriaWaye on grief and loss. I hope something in that interview resonated with you. Maybe it was Victoria talking about how her sister processed grief completely differently than she did. Maybe it was the reminder that you're allowed to grieve past versions of yourself. Or maybe it was just hearing someone say out loud that comparative suffering is bullshit and your pain matters regardless of what anyone else is going through. One thing that really stuck with me from this conversation is Victoria's point about how we're more connected than ever, but somehow also more isolated. We can talk to someone across the world instantly, but we've lost the art of just sitting with each other, sitting with someone's grief, sitting with our own. We fill every moment with distractions because looking inward is uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable, I get it, but avoiding grief doesn't make it go away. It just means it'll hit you sideways when you're not ready for it. If you are dealing with loss right now in any form, I want you to know that there's no right way to do this. You don't have to follow some predetermined timeline. You don't have to be strong for everyone else. You don't have to compare your pain to anyone else's and decide yours isn't valid enough. Feel what you feel. Give yourself permission to grieve. And if you need help processing it, find a therapist or counselor or someone trained to walk you through it, because that's what they're there for. And even if you're not grieving right now, someone in your life probably is. Check in on your people. Ask if they have the capacity to talk before you unload on them. Be the person who lifts others up instead of draining them. Create those bonds that Victoria talked about. We need each other, especially when things are hard. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you that Even Tacos Fall Apart is here because mental health matters and we need to talk about it openly. If this episode helped you in any way, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment or review wherever you're listening right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. All of that really does help more people find the show, and that means more conversations like this one. You can find lots of links and information in the show notes. Go check out what Victoria's doing. Support creators who are willing to be vulnerable and share their stories. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember that it's okay to fall apart sometimes. Even tacos do it, and we still love them anyway. I'll catch you in the next one.